What's up, everyone? True Techno Gamer here, down in the lab, the basement, home theater. So time for some other home theater updates, let's call it. If you guys have been following my channel and you saw my 2023 home theater tour, and I did some follow-up videos about have I reached endgame, I actually pointed out several key areas that I felt that my system clearly was not at quote-unquote endgame. Again, overall, like I've said, if I never got another upgrade or never had a chance to change anything, I'll be good, and I'll have enough here to enjoy. But that's no fun, right? For the sake of this channel and for the sake of this hobby. So given the means, given the time, yeah, there were a couple of areas. I actually realized later that, because of course I had to record, I've recorded multiple copies and instances. And I actually think in the one that I published, I actually missed one. But I called out TV, which never quite gets to endgame. I called out the subs, which are really, really good. And I feel like that's probably the least likely thing I will ever touch in this space, just because I don't really get to utilize them fully in this space. They're still pretty powerful, pretty big, just the room, right, is the issue here. And I also, called out my streamer, which right now is the Blue Sound Node, right? The fourth one that I think I missed in the public one was, of course, the Atmos speakers. And just saying that, I had some SVS prime elevation, very, very versatile speakers, relatively cheap, it's pretty low risk. And again, for this space, I didn't want to go full in ceiling quite yet for different reasons. That was the next best option for aesthetics to keep them out. They look pretty good. They're a nice size, have a decent sound. Well, that was the case up until now, and one of the four areas have been addressed in terms of an upgrade. Can you guess which one? All right, so let's get into it, and I've been pretty strategic about my positioning and placement so far in this video. So if you've guessed, here it is. The new SVS Ultra Elevation speakers. Now, these have been something that apparently SVS owner has said was the most requested speaker from them. If you guys follow SVS, or maybe not, I'll definitely include a link down here. But the company back in March has unveiled a brand new flagship speaker line that they call the Ultra series. It's the new version of the Ultra series. They call it the Ultra Evolution series, which is pretty cool. It's a little bit more expensive, of course, as I've mentioned many times on the channel. That's going to be the case, just inflation and parts. And they are going in. They didn't want just an Ultra V2. They wanted a brand new flagship speaker that they could really be proud of. And across the line, I think they've done a pretty darn good job. They top out at $5,000 for the pair of towers. And that price range is a lot of competition, but I think they hold up pretty well. Now, obviously, I've talked in my channel, I have already invested in my flagship, tower speakers and center channel and, all of that. But, I thought this thing would be a nice addition. For me, I always thought that they probably would, do a bigger version of the, elevation speakers. And here it is. So this is cool because I get a chance to support SVS, which I have been doing for literally over 15 years now. I think they're a great company, great value. I've met people at SVS multiple times. I actually saw and actually got a chance to demo the Ultra Evolution speakers back at CES in January. And I spoke to, the several employees there that I've seen throughout the years. So shout out to those guys. And they're pretty cool. So I got a home theater demo with these, and they're like Pinnacle, which is the top of the line tower speakers. I got a sound music demo with their Titans, which is the mid-range tower speaker. So I already had, exposure to this line. They finally released them in March. And, this is kind of my most likely, entrant into my home theater from that line. So why Ultra Elevation? Why not is really what it comes down to. In my room, I think the biggest issue I have in terms of getting, from elevation speakers is just the placement. And, I had aspirations to place my elevation. I don't know if you can see the two prime elevations that's kind of in my front. They're angled, kind of at an angle to kind of hit the center point here of my seating area. Same thing in the back here, they're kind of angled where they can kind of get right there to the seating area. Ideally, I would have them closer together, where I can aim them straight at the seating area here, and then aim them where they're angled straight this way at the seating area here. For aesthetic reasons, for, input from my wife, so the wow factor, of course. There's piping, of course, in the ceiling and HVAC here. I mean, there's practical limitations I have. This is just the best compromise for aesthetics. My wife didn't like the idea of showing a whole lot of wires. So, minimize the wires because they're basically, I already had a plate built in with the wiring through the wall. And they had to put them farther out than I had liked because of the piping and ceiling fan roughing is there as well and other stuff, right? I could do probably better with that if I really wanted to. It's just not something I guess I'm willing to invest a whole lot of time and effort in right now. That said, the placement I've had them in and the angling of the speakers themselves, have been pretty good, unlike a lot of, in ceilings that are aimed straight down or, have maybe a little bit of angling and tilting you can do. These are pretty flexible. I can pretty much angle them and tilt them how I want. So I've had a good compromise. Now, I've never had any other Atmos speakers in here, right? So it'd be interesting to see how these compare. Those speakers, and actually, let me do that. Let me kind of show you guys what that looks like side by side. All right, so here is the prime elevation, and you can see it in my hand. I have 4 of these babies. They're still a pretty good build quality. You can see in the back, they have a little port here. And here it is side by side with the ultra elevation. And I mean, this is not going to come across in the camera, I'm sure, but the difference in size is noticeable. The ultra elevations are wider, taller. They have a bigger woofer. So these only have a 4-inch woofer, the prime elevations. Now with the ultra, we actually have, I think it's a 5 1/4 inch, woofer. So that's going to, in theory, yield a much wider dispersion. There's a whole lot of stuff. This is a whole different cabinet. Internally, the bracing and everything is much more sophisticated. And of course, this tweeter is special. Maybe on the surface, it may look pretty similar. So here they are side by side. You can see the difference. This ultra elevation has a completely different tweeter. It actually has a diamond coated aluminum tweeter now. And, this cover on it is really to protect it, but it also is similar to what I talked about, what you guys seen in the Paradigm, the PPA lens is kind of, their version of that. It actually has different shapes, special, shape to disperse the sound, get rid of out of phase sounds. It serves a very similar purpose to what the PPA lens is on the Paradigm pose. It's a lot more sophisticated around the tweeter here than here. I don't know if that can pick up. It's a little bit, there's a tweeter cover there, but it's a lot more plain. We have here an ultra elevation, and again, a bigger speaker, heavier speaker, but the actual cover on the tweeter is completely different shape lattice. I'm sure there's a lot of sophisticated mathematics and geometry that goes into that. But needless to say, again, build quality here is next level. Again, they look pretty close to the same on the surface, but yeah, even the woofer here has a different material. It's a much more stiff, much more sturdy material here. This is pretty much like paper, more paper. So yeah, and then show you the back a little bit here. You can see that. I'll flip it around, but again, the actual posts are inverted here, which would be interesting. I got to see how that plays out when I try to mount it. Bigger port here, which makes sense because there's a bigger woofer, right? And then yeah, much higher quality binding post even here, right? You can see the gold plated binding post here, right? On the SVS prime elevation here, it's a much more simple, cheap, honestly, binding post here. So, this is a flagship. And I hopefully will appreciate the bigger size. Bigger size cabinet also means you can push more air. More air means more dispersion. Bigger woofer means wider dispersion. And because we have a whole new arrangement, there's a new crossover in here, of course. The actual transition between the tweeter and mid-range is completely different because this is a much more sophisticated tweeter that has a much wider frequency response with that diamond coating. By the way, if you've heard of diamond coated tweeters from B&W, the 800 series, that's diamond coated. It kind of uses a very similar process here. Again, those speakers are, in the 5-figure ranges. And, this Ultra Evolution, one of these is really just $450, like literally. These are $250, so almost double the price. But you get a lot more, I think, for that money, like honestly. So, but anyway, with the diamond coated tweeter, the crossover, the way it's arranged, again, should be a much wider dispersion of sound, much more articulate and detailed sound as well. Now, how much of that would you really hear from an elevation speaker serving as an Atmos in a home theater, right? That's a, honest question. But again, it's pretty low risk because it's really not that expensive, relatively speaking. First of all, these speakers are fairly unique as well. There aren't other companies that make a flagship Atmos speaker, right? There are companies that make, those Atmos modules that you can put on top of your speakers. A lot of companies do that. And some of them you can wall mount and put on the wall. But very few companies have where they literally are designed for Atmos, right? In a home theater, or just flexibility. You can use these speakers as like your front, left, and right. You can mount them as your surrounds as well. You can use these speakers for everything, quite frankly. But they are specifically designed for Atmos, which is pretty unique in and of itself. The tapered shape of the cabinet here is to that point, right? And you can angle them to the listener's ears a lot better. So I applaud, SVS for even making this an option, which is why a lot of people bought these. Whatever speakers they use, whatever system they had, not SVS, but they usually use, or a lot of people did, get the Prime Elevation because they were just easy, still pretty high quality speakers, right? These aren't some little cheap things. And, you can get a lot out of them, put them anywhere, and, have an Atmos setup. So now we step it up. And I think obviously this goes more in line, obviously, with the level of system that I have and I've been trying to build. So that's awesome. These are almost twice the weight. I think these are around 7 pounds and these are about 13 pounds. So they're literally almost twice the weight. Again, just more substantial build quality there. So I'm really curious. Of course, I haven't hooked them up yet. I got to take these down, make sure I mount them more securely, make sure that, I don't have no speakers falling on our heads. But I definitely would do a follow-up video in a few weeks or maybe a month or so to give me a good chance to get a feel for them, where I'll let you guys know, right, if it's really worth it, if it's something that, you can hear. It clearly is a much better built speaker. The technology in here is definitely well beyond this thing. And in person, you can see that from, again, just looking even at the front, feeling the cones, feeling the materials. This woofer is way more sophisticated. This diamond tweeter is way more sophisticated. Frequency response across the board is much wider, so that's all good. And it can push more air. So, hey, we'll see. Upgrade number 1 for 2024. Keep those other 3 in mind. We'll see what happens, right? But for now, I'm just sharing with you guys. I will do a follow-up, like I said, let you know how this goes. But for now, that is all. True Techno Gamer here, signing off.